please do watch this video from the beginning to the end before you come at me. I watched Shannon's video 3 times now, and I have also rewatched Emily Artful's videos. And I think I look at it more so as if, for clarity's sake, if I were on a jury and I was presented with evidence from both parties, from the plaintiff in this sense, which is Emily Artful, and the defendant, whom I would categorize as being Shannon and Anthony, I would have to claim that Shannon is not guilty, that CreepShow Art is not guilty. That, however, does not mean that I side with CreepShow Art in terms of her character, in terms of her moral stance, in terms of making a evaluation on her personhood, on who she is, because that is not what is important here, regrettably. Yet that is what the internet has ultimately determined is important. The notion of her character, on whether she is a good person, whether she is slimy or not. All kinds of quite horrible, vitriolic terminology to describe her. And that is purely because of evidence provided. I realized that I, in fact, started this video without in any way providing any explanation of what I am talking about. So without further ado, here is a very, very short introduction to the situation at hand. CreepShow Art, whose real name is Shannon, was, as of recording, a YouTuber who specialized in art commentary. She was a member of the art commentary community, and her video style was very much her either featuring her own art or that of smaller and other creators on her channel that you could watch. It was very relaxing to watch whilst she spoke about something that was happening on YouTube or in the wider society. Mainly things that were quite digestible, a lot of moral outrage, a lot of, I would say, sanctimonious content, very much do better kind of content, and exposing other creators who had fallen short of the moral standards that have been set by not just the art commentary community, but the commentary community on YouTube in general. In short, when it came to something serious that had happened, such as Shane Dawson's scandal, James Charles scandals, CreepShow Art was one of the prominent voices whom you would go to in order to find out what was happening and get a more, shall we say, heated and emotional and passionate response from. So I would personally go to her videos if something had happened. She uploaded very consistently, and her channel was starting to really grow as of early 2021. And of course, inevitably, being a commentary YouTuber, you put yourself up to intense scrutiny from your audience and also from other creators whom you are inevitably competing with for views and recognition. The contradictions and the juxtaposition of the YouTuber commentary space is that on the one hand, this community demands very high moral standards from creators and from each other, and the audience is no different. Yet on the other hand, this community inevitably is making content in an environment and on a space in which being a YouTuber is about making money and making a living and supporting your business. The two things do not align with one another very effectively, inevitably and sadly. Commentators are competing with one another for views. They are competing with one another for business. And when you try to align the two, it does not work out very well. And I think the most effective but also the most risky way in which YouTubers have tried to merge the two is via making friends with fellow creators, being friends with fellow commentators, which has proved in the majority of cases that we know publicly about disadvantageous and not, in fact, a good mix in any way, shape, or form. This entire situation regarding defamation, slander, and libel in some cases relates to an incident which happened earlier this year in approximately June. Shannon was accused of posting anonymously on a forum, a gossip forum called lolcow.farm, effectively trash talking other content creators, specifically content creators whom she has publicly identified as being her friends. She was also accused of using very ableist and transphobic and in some cases even racist language and inferences.
CreepShow responded to this on a YouTube community post saying that her stalker, who she had a long history with, had been posing as her, spoofing her IP address for the past 3 years, and had made all of these posts on the lolcow forums. However, it soon came out that you can't even spoof IPs in the way she's suggesting, and the admins of the lolcow forums didn't even use her IP to identify her, but the cookies of her browser. The drama got even bigger when Emily Artful, a YouTuber that makes similar types of content, dropped a video stating that CreepShow's partner had been stalking her for the past decade, and that CreepShow had been getting involved recently. She said that CreepShow had threatened her with her revenge porn from when she was 17, and sent numerous vague threats through sock accounts continuously. Ready to Glare, a close friend of CreepShow, came out with a video where she said that she did believe that CreepShow made those posts on the lolcow forum. Apparently behind the scenes, CreepShow has told all of her friends to disassociate from her and not defend her at all in this drama. She stated on Instagram that she would be handling all of this legally, and then shortly afterwards, she deactivated her account.
If you are seeing this video, it means one of two things has happened. Either one, my lawyers negotiated with Emily's lawyers and we reached a private settlement which resulted in some form of retraction, or two, I took Emily to court for defamation and came out the other side. This video is being made for posterity to show I didn't do what I was accused of, and to show that what Emily has accused me and my husband of not only never happened to her, but could not have happened. This video is being made to simply defend my and my husband's name and prove we did not do the things we were accused of.
So the fact that we are seeing this video means one of two things. The first option cannot be the case because, as we can see at the time of recording, Emily Artful's videos about CreepShow Art are still up on her channel. So therefore, the second proposition must be true. This is quite clearly a case of defamation if we go by the legal definition of defamation. What is also important to note about this opening statement is that Shannon states that this video is being made for posterity reasons. That is in order to clear her name of the accusations that have been leveled against her. And she is doing this from the perspective of clearly her legal team. This has been given the go-ahead by her legal team, and she has been working with her legal team since probably this began about 6+ months ago. And Shannon has every right to do this. This is her YouTube channel. She doesn't have to talk about things that she doesn't want to talk about. So the notion of whataboutisms, why she didn't talk about XYZ, specifically lolcow, which I will definitely be getting into because that is a whole other can of worms, doesn't stand. This video is about Emily Artful's accusations, and ultimately these accusations, if not in themselves defamatory, were definitely slanderous and were definitely, at least in legal terms, defamatory.
Some things said in this video are personal suspicions and feelings. None of what I discuss has been settled in a court of law. What I am able to prove are exchanges that come from my own personal accounts on my personal cell phone. I encourage you to take all the evidence I provided here in my previous video on Twitter, as well as the multiple testimonies from witnesses to the suspected stalking and harassment, and draw your own conclusions.
I would like to really bring this point home that I do believe I think the problem with the video was that, firstly, the good. She presented evidence, and her evidence was solid, especially in comparison, unfortunately, to Emily Artful's 2 videos on CreepShow Art, in which there was hardly any, if any, solid, concrete evidence. And I say this because of the fact that in Emily Artful's videos, everything was based on feeling, on speculation, on coincidence, and how everything was ultimately very conveniently coincidental. And a lot of it was determined by the tone in which Emily herself read and interpreted events.
And after everything, I consulted with the lawyer, I went back to the police, I even hired a private investigator for a short time to do some digging. I, 1, ran out of money, and 2, was advised by the lawyer not to take this to court, that it would be a lengthy court battle, and it's not like justice will be served, because it's really hard to prove that Shannon and Andrew ran all those sock puppet accounts because there was so many of them. Now, I realize the number one thing that I can't prove here is how much involvement Shannon had in orchestrating the harassment. It is my personal belief that Shannon kind of had like this little sidekick role at the beginning. I feel like at the beginning it was kind of like an inside joke. I'm sure in Andrew's head it was more than an inside joke, but eventually Shannon just got too roped into it and it became an obsession for both of them, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control. I shared this screenshot on Twitter, but I will share it here. This is, again, from my Twitter data. Because Shannon deleted her Twitter account, I cannot see her initial message. This was obviously after I had confronted Shannon about potentially stalking me, because this is in March of 2019 that she sent me this message that you obviously can't see. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to take my word for it. I got a Twitter DM yesterday, June 10th, 2021 at 7:08 p.m. And this Twitter account that's been around since 2017, whose screen name is also BritaFilter. And the message reads, "Hey, Emily, I was looking through Shannon's lolcow post again and realized that she posted a deleted video of yours saying that a channel was reposting them. I was wondering if you had seen this channel, name of the copycat channel, and if it's yours or something malicious. Sorry if this is old information or not relevant, just thought I'd mention it. Take care." What's really interesting and is something to think about is this account has been used since the day it was created. Now, I'm not going to post receipts of any of this because I don't want to lead a sheep to slaughter, especially everybody listening. This may not be Shannon. This is all speculation. I do not know the age or location of this person. I did my absolute best to censor things. Obviously, it seems that Shannon likes to have a lot of sock puppet accounts, and I had always wondered if she had some dedicated sock puppet accounts that she actually used. But not only that, I quote-unquote hear her voice and Anthony's sense of humor, which I guess by extension is also her sense of humor, all up and down this Twitter account. What's really suspicious to me is that the YouTube account referenced is an account that I believe Shannon and Anthony were using to archive my videos. Anthony responds, "Harassing? No, I've only posted in what my accounts are, like what has my face on it. And I'm not angry. I was just curious. I figured maybe if I get more ridiculous, I'd get a response. I wanted to see where your stuff went, which is why I was bummed you blocked me. But no, I'm not angry at all. Thank you for the reason, though. Much appreciated. Good luck out there." What I find super suspicious now that I look back at it, I didn't mention anything about sock accounts in this conversation. So I don't know why he felt the need to clarify that he only uses accounts with his face on them when I didn't say a word about sock accounts until after he messaged this. Now, I had previously mentioned to him in passing that I was receiving a lot of hate on my social media, but that would have been years before this conversation took place. And since it was just in passing, I didn't go into detail about what kind of accounts were harassing me. And because I didn't go into detail about who was sending me hate, for all he knew, it could have been someone I knew in real life. So why put that detail in when he had very little knowledge of the people sending me hate? And again, when I had mentioned this to him, it would have been years prior to this conversation. This is why I believe that it might have been Shannon responding to me. Shannon is many things, but stupid is not one of them. She's clearly developed a very quick wit and the ability to have an answer for everything. I urge you to compare the language in this exchange to the language in the exchange between Shannon and I in October 2018.
That is not to say at all that Emily was lying, because I don't believe that she's lying. I believe that Emily believes that what she went through has to do ultimately with Shannon and Anthony. And that is her belief and her experience. And nobody, not myself, not anyone on the internet, not if this went to court, a court of law, could say otherwise. Nobody can and ought to invalidate her experience or her character. And that is what is unfortunate. It is unfortunate that even though this happened to Emily Artful, and this is how she experienced the events which happened to her, it unfortunately is not enough. The issue with Shannon's video, the bad of it, is that because it was very clinical and it was very objective insofar as presenting concrete evidence and making very convincing and justifiable inferences from that evidence. YouTube is not a court of law. YouTube is not about objectivism in this sense. YouTube had already determined that Shannon was guilty before she could prove herself otherwise. Regrettably, in any anarcho-capitalist ideal, and I think the best examples we have are Twitter and YouTube, nobody is innocent until they are proven guilty. It's the opposite way round. You are guilty until you are proven innocent, and most of the time you cannot be proven innocent because you are regrettably forgotten. You are irrelevant. People don't believe you because, well, it's all about emotion. And emotion does not have time for objectivity. It does not have time for the very impersonal, dehumanized, clinical approach which Shannon went into in her video. And I think that's where she lost a lot of people. A lot of people were willing to, for instance, sit through and watch Emily's 2-hour video about CreepShow Art, and then her second video, which in total amounts to more than CreepShow Art's video, which was 2 hours, 30 minutes approximately. I believe that the reason why it was a lot easier to watch Emily's video, and I personally found it a lot easier and a lot more heartfelt in watching Emily's video, is because it was very emotive. It was very personal. You could feel her emotions, her passion, her sentiment. You could feel that she was a human being with feelings, emotions, with thoughts, that she was experiencing paranoia around this. And that really pulled at my heartstrings. Shannon's video did not feature that. And I think something that would have been very effective in Shannon actually getting people onto her side is if she had actually done a face reveal of sorts. I mean, we know how Shannon looks, but if she had actually done a sit-down video and had actually spoken directly to her audience, if it wasn't so much about presenting evidence, because that is, regrettably for Shannon, not what people are interested in. People are not interested in the receipts in so much as it proving that you are right and that everybody else is wrong. Because that is ultimately, if we really do look at it, and I am quite certain of this because I've watched this video 3 times. Yes, whilst everybody else was out getting drunk and enjoying the introduction of the new year, I was watching CreepShow Art's incredibly tedious video. What she had to say was right. She was right about what had happened. In comparison to Emily's video, in which everything is not substantiated by solid evidence. It is all based on Emily's own speculations, on Emily's own paranoia, on Emily's own interpretation of things, rather than on what was in fact said or what wasn't said.
I didn't make a video on that because I didn't know those things until now. And I'm only making one now because you falsely accused Anthony and I of stalking you while also stating you have no evidence and would lose a court case. Emily also states that me telling her that someone messaged me like this and I wasn't going to do anything was my way of threatening her. Me saying I wasn't going to do something was not my way of telling her I was going to do something. Emily purposely misinterprets anything I've had to say to her to make it appear as if I'm telling her the opposite. If I tell her I understand what she's going through and I'm more than happy to sign a restraining order or any legal documents that state I will not contact her, that means I'm engaging in psychological warfare with her and I'm using reverse psychology to say I won't actually do that. If I tell her I'm sorry for what she's going through because I know how isolating being harassed online can be, I'm actually telling her that I am one of the people doing this all along and I'm getting joy out of it. I also provided Emily with a way to send me a restraining order that would have been just as legally binding without spending any money, something she stated at the time she didn't want to do because she was out of money, and I agreed that me and Anthony would sign it. I gave her my legal information and told her exactly how to reach Anthony and I, and she hid those messages in her video to make it appear as if I was doing the opposite. This is why no lawyer supported the idea of her taking this to court, because there is no court case here.
And people on the internet don't care, unfortunately for Shannon, about facts in that way. They care about accountability, they care about morality, about the sanctimony of being an influencer and an internet personality. And this is purely going on the evidence that can be found on Emily Artful's channel. Shannon is right that the vast majority of what she presents in this video is publicly available online. Is it morally questionable? Is it a bit sus? Of course it is. I mean, anybody going into somebody's social media accounts and looking through everything, it's a bit odd. But given the context and the situation in which Shannon has clearly been defamed, largely by lolcow, we will get into that, as opposed to just Emily Artful, this makes perfect sense for her, specifically her legal team, to go into such thorough and extensive detail. This in no way, at least from my very analytical position, presents her as being a stalker. And she does clarify this in her opening statement, in which she says that this video inevitably puts her in a situation where she looks like she is a stalker because she has done what any investigative journalist, what any legal team would do, what any, I would hazard, attorney would suggest that their client does in a situation such as this. Collect all the evidence that you can. This is the kind of thing that investigative journalists do, that the commentary community is theoretically meant to do in order to validate claims that they make. I would say that going over Shannon's earlier content and the videos that she has made about other YouTubers, she, like the rest of the prominent members of the commentary community, I would argue, did not go into such extensive detail. Because commentary channels, like all channels on YouTube, are here for one reason, and that is to make money, especially those that are exclusively those that are in the YouTube partnership program. Shannon was exactly the same. Her channel was thriving, and it was thriving because she was liked by the algorithm. She was churning out content very consistently, very effectively, and a consequence of that inevitably is that less research can be done, less solid evidence, and all the very tedious detail and meticulous findings can be put into a video. You're trying to appease an audience and to garner views. Unfortunately, this kind of video which Shannon has given us is exactly the kind of thing which is a catch-22. This is the kind of thorough, in-depth evidence and research that seemingly people want from the commentary and drama community. But The negative side of that is that it's very dry. This kind of thing, investigative journalism, is in essence very dry and very tedious. It involves digging into things. It involves being morally questionable in terms of finding the truth. And I think this is worrying because the drama community and the commentary community on YouTube regarding other YouTubers and YouTuber subcultures is losing a lot of credibility. And in my eyes, at least, this entire situation is incredibly questionable in terms of their investigative journalistic skills and abilities. I think what we need to remember is that YouTubers, myself included, are not professionals of any sense, but there is that expectation to do enough work that you don't end up doing what has happened here, in which a fellow YouTuber has been defamed and their reputation and image completely decimated. This is evidenced by the response that Shannon got to her video, placing and putting forward all the evidence that her and her legal team, most likely her legal team that she's been working with, have found on Emily Artful's various social media accounts. These are claims which apparently a commentary community, which is meant to be a community that looks into these kinds of details, that looks into social media accounts of the people that they're commenting about, should have been aware of and should have done better, quite frankly. I don't mean this in a accusatory way of you are bad people, not at all. But in terms of the standards which this community, and I do group Shannon into this, the standards which they expect of the community and of one another, the standards which their viewership expects of them, they ought to have lived up to and complemented those standards, which was not the case. Lolcow.farm is a chat forum, a gossip forum. There are very noticeable characteristics of this forum, namely that everybody who posts is anonymous and that there are particular rules going in and before you can post to lolcow. A creator who I think should have been at the forefront of this entire situation from the get-go is Tech With Grumpo. Tech With Grumpo is a computer scientist and this is her specialism. She is absolutely brilliant. She's incredible. Her videos on this were amazing when she put them out and are even more prescient and amazing now.
Most people are saying that lolcow is a toxic forum, but they're on the side of lolcow because Shannon lied to all of us. And they exposed her, and they had every right to expose her because she broke the rules. This is where I am going to give my opinion, but it's more of an opinion about the company and data privacy. Personally, I think that the idea of revoking anyone's anonymity for the sake of you thought you could outsmart me is deplorable. I think that regardless of what they posted about anonymously, if they posted something about harming someone or something, then go to the police. You don't have to make this a super public thing. I think we're all entitled to privacy to an extent. And for me personally, this kind of crosses a line. I'm of the opinion that what happens between you and the internet should stay between you and the internet, you and your web browser, and be protected by whoever stores your data and not just exposed. And I also think that making it everyone's business was irresponsible on lolcow's part. Like I said, they have nothing to definitively tie it to Shannon unless she either told them at some point that she was Shannon or they used one of those passwords for post deletion in one of her accounts, which is still not okay. That means that by exposing her, they either definitively exposed her, definitively knew what they were doing, so therefore they had hacked one of her accounts using a password that she gave them that's similar to her other accounts, or they took a gamble and said it was her without definitive evidence. Now, like, a lot of people have opinions on like whether the circumstantial evidence is enough, but if I were the one taking that risk, I know that that would be opening me up to a lawsuit. I say she definitely did this, and then I can't definitively prove that it was her. She can sue me for defamation. She's lost 60,000 subscribers at the time of filming this, so she can very easily prove damages because the admin very obviously outed her and her career has taken a turn at this point. If it were me, I would not take that risk because a big lawsuit, YouTuber money. I know I couldn't afford somebody losing 60,000 subscribers. I suppose my point is that lolcow exposed her. It was either definitive or not. And either way, it's bad. The definitive way, they hack somebody, bad. The non-definitive way, they open themselves up to slander, bad. So can we say for sure whether Shannon did anything wrong? As spectators, we may actually never know. It sounds like there have been some behind-the-scenes talks. People have come out with their opinion, but we don't have evidence, and lolcow doesn't really either. One thing I can say is that lolcow has questionable at best morals, and I would discourage anybody from using them.
In short, there's absolutely no way that we can prove that Shannon was behind all of these posts which this lolcow admin purports she is behind.
I wanted to get a feel for the site and again see what sort of information I would have to give this site in order to use it. I was gonna cut this part out because it makes me look bad. I'm not proud of this, but I'm an incredibly curious person and sometimes my curiosity can get the better of me. I may or may not have applied for a sysadmin job there. There was a link. It was directly under the make a post button. I was going to make a post and I wanted to know more because I was really curious at this point. So I briefly applied to be a sysadmin there. They actually reached out to me and they were super nice, which is why I feel bad about this. But to get a feel for what the admins do, I asked, what are the responsibilities? What's the time commitment, etc.? It turns out that there's only one sysadmin right now. This would be the second sysadmin. So remember when I said that companies, even smaller companies smaller than Twitter, the company that I was at was smaller than Twitter at the time, when I was doing fraud, or not committing fraud, but researching fraud. And there were 7 of us working on identity bridging. There's only one person who does identity bridging, apparently. It's a really tough problem. So that was really interesting because this person is responsible for keeping the site up, reliability, performance, making sure the site is fast enough, scalability, making sure the site can handle more people as it grows. And a lot of sites, that's what they do, they grow. Especially now that lolcow has gotten all of this press, really, from CreepShow Art. They're probably growing quite a bit. So you have one person who's doing all of that, and I was on lolcow earlier today looking over it, and the site went down. They had an outage. So this individual was taking care of this outage. This individual is likely the person who takes care of all of the outages, and they do a 7-person job that the 7 people aren't very good at. That seems too good to be true, really. That person, I don't know if that site generates revenue. In order for a site to fall under the California Privacy Act, they have to be generating over $20 million, I believe, in revenue, or get their revenue from selling data. And since the site is mostly anonymous, there's not that much data that it could sell. So this person has to be making money somehow, or selling questionable data, which I'll get into. They're responsible for keeping the site up, and they do identity bridging, which not even 7 people could do well. So let's keep this in mind. All of this is important, I swear.
And a major problem here as well, interestingly enough, which I am actually a bit horrified that we have not been speaking about with regards to this, is how lolcow, actually, if they do have indisputable evidence that all of these posts were posted by Shannon, that is specifically by her, which they have not proved as of the date that I am putting this video out. That is a breach of privacy on so many levels. This is the kind of thing that if Mark Zuckerberg did, I think the world would be in flames. think that this is very important. While moderators did not explicitly explain why they believed the account to belong to Shannon, lolcow uses cookies, a small piece of data that holds information that moderators can cross-reference with IP addresses to discern who runs each account posting on the site.
The interesting thing about lolfarm, though, is that you don't create an account on this site. You just post things. So knowing that, the question of how did they tie this all to one individual over several years becomes extremely interesting and challenging. A big guess was indefinite cookies, and I'll get to that. But with respect to IP addresses, during some of this, she was using various public Wi-Fi at various locations, I believe, unless I got her timeline wrong. I don't know too much about her, so I wouldn't know. But multiple devices, multiple IP addresses, no account. All of that implies that either they have indefinite cookies, they're full of crap, or there's a third ambiguous way that they're tracking you. So commentary channels mentioned this when they covered it, but lolcow has outed YouTubers for breaking the rules on their platform before, and these YouTubers have admitted to making the posts. Them being full of crap seems a little less likely. So it's either the cookies thing or the some other mysterious thing.
Editing me here, I've done a little bit more research and thinking, and what I found is quite interesting. I think that a viable explanation for how lolcow.farm is able to claim that Shannon is behind the 200 various posts is via zombie cookies. This is the practice of recreating deleted cookies. When done for commercial reasons, many major companies have been taken to court and they have lost because it can be proved that users were victims of unfair deception and unlawful business practices, and that their privacy, their financial interests, and computer security rights were violated. And I do believe that Shannon can prove this and can show this based on the information given by lolcow. In 2012, consumers alleged that Google itself used zombie cookies that continued to collect consumers' browsing information even after they actively set up controls to block the use of cookies. The case ended with $5.5 million in settlement. Yet, whatever the explanation may be, Shannon not admitting guilt, firstly, and also being able to evidence that a breach of privacy was committed against her, if these posts were made by her, and it can be proved definitively that they were made by her, which I do not think is the case, this can be used in a lawsuit and a defamation case against lolcow. And she could very likely win that case. Shannon inevitably alienated her audience with this video because it definitely does not match the style of her previous content. It doesn't match the style in that, firstly, it's very impersonal and it is very legalistic. It's full of legal jargon, full of legal information, and full of that typical notion of setting out an argument in which you state your case, you state your evidence, and then you have a conclusion. And that is sort of the running theme of this entire video. And it is done, legally speaking, academically speaking, in a very convincing way, and gets top marks for that. But in terms of trying to connect with an audience who inevitably are very emotionally and moralistically invested in this, not legally, this did not hit home. And that is where double-edged sword comes in which this video ultimately provides the evidence which it states it will provide, and it does so in a way that does not correlate to the importance that the internet places on taking accountability and responsibility for one's actions, for one's character, for who one is, for one's persona online. And it's very interesting that even though, legally speaking, I would say that she has a solid case for alleging defamation, for proving defamation, and proving that her career was destroyed based on allegations which cannot be substantiated without a shadow of a doubt. She has, however, lost. her character has been destroyed. Shannon as a person, morally speaking, is over, quite frankly. Whether that's right or not, that's up to everybody else to decide. I think this is quite topical going into this year, this idea of who an influencer is and parasocial relationships, because I think a lot of people felt very let down by Shannon. I can understand why a lot of people felt incredibly betrayed, and the significance of parasocial relationships in our day and age, and on YouTube specifically, is an incredibly fascinating phenomena. And when I say that mob mentality is definitely a feature of Shannon's response and of people branding Shannon as not a good person, I do mean that wholeheartedly. I think one thing that I did say, that I do remember saying when this happened about 6+ months ago, was that I would stay subscribed to Shannon's channel until she responded to these accusations leveled at her. And it was a moment for me to really self-reflect, because one thing that Shannon said in her video, which I think is very important, is that everything that she presented was public and was public knowledge. Now, I don't believe that that is true. I think some of the things that she presents are not public. Some of the things that she references are from now deleted or privated videos from Emily Artful's channel, or a previous channel which she had under the name Emily Sugarfruit. However, Shannon had access to those somehow, and she was therefore able to present them in this video response that she did. And I think this just raises a very important conversation that I think needs to be had in this new year. Whether it will be or not is irrelevant, but I think it is important that it is nonetheless had. This idea that creators and influencers need to be humanized again. They need to be treated like human beings and people. And this is something that I think this issue particularly brings very convincingly to light. A lot of the comments under Shannon's video state that she has not treated Emily like a human being. In short, euphemistically, that she's been stalking her, that she's a horrible person, that she has problems, that she's sick, that she needs to leave the internet because clearly she does not know how to interact with another human being, with another creator properly. And there is that expectation from her audience and from the people who've watched this video that Shannon needs to treat people like people, basically. This relationship inevitably needs to be a contingent one. It needs to be one in which creators treat other creators and their audience like human beings, and audiences treat creators like human beings. And I think this issue demonstrates how that is very much not the case. Irrespective of how we may feel about Shannon, I personally have no feelings, emotive feelings toward Shannon, or necessarily toward Emily Artful. I think that this entire issue just proves to me that I cannot determine the character of either individual or of anybody via a screen. I think it's very difficult to. And we can try to be as charismatic, as personable, as human as we can possibly be. But at the end of the day, I'm speaking to a camera and you are watching me not in real time, but based on a video that I've uploaded to my channel. Our communication is indirect, it's surveillanced, it doesn't convey your situation, the circumstances in which you find yourself in. You don't know the circumstances in which I find myself in now. And yet we make character judgments on creators. They make character judgments on us. And we're all having a conversation. We're seemingly having the same conversation, but we are most definitely not. And that's when accusations and miscommunication come in, and when everything just does not work out and go well at all, as the situation shows. And I think Shannon's audience has very much dehumanized her, which, from my analytical mindset, makes me understand why she is so unremorseful and why she is not apologizing because she's very much approaching this from a very legal position. If you went to court with this, there would be no apology, there would be no reference to morality, because justice is not about morality. Justice is about the law in absolute terms. It's about evidence and facts, and that is it. It gets rid of human emotion. It gets rid of what is right and what is wrong in the interest of moving forward. And that is obviously a problem of the law, which, a lot of people debate about and theorize about and what have you. That's a whole other academic thing, and I promised myself I would not be academic in this video. Apologies. Shannon isn't remorseful. She isn't apologetic. Her video was basically a fuck you to her audience, myself included, to commentary channels, to drama, tea channels, to Emily Artful, to everyone, the people who she thought were her friends. And I can understand why she said those things, why she has said those things, why she has approached YouTube in this sense. And I can understand why she's leaving. And I do think that it is a good thing that she is leaving. And I don't think a good thing insofar as the internet doesn't need her. I do believe strongly that the internet should be a free for all. If you want to be on the internet, if you want to be on YouTube, you should not be cancelled or taken off of the internet for any reason. And I definitely think that there's quite a bit of hypocrisy insofar as the treatment of Shannon relative to that of other creators who've done, legally speaking, very questionable and heinous and criminal things. And it is very interesting, the sort of standards which are set for certain creators relative to others, and that's for a variety of different reasons. I will not go into that because that's a whole other can of worms, which I'm sure everybody watching is familiar with, at least to some extent. But it is definitely intriguing to see how Shannon has effectively been chased off the internet and has accepted that fate, but not as graciously as I think the internet wants her to have accepted that. And I do think that Emily Artful should, not in the same way, but in a sense, find more meaning off the internet. I think this insofar as more of this is hopefully interpreted in a less emotive and more serious and more investigative and journalistic way, looking at the evidence presented rather than looking at the character of the defendant or the character of Emily Artful, but rather at what has been presented and whether it stands up to intense, very honest scrutiny, that more people do see that what Shannon has presented is actually viable and actually makes a lot more sense. I fear that that will induce people to direct a mob-like mentality toward Emily Artful, which I do not believe she deserves at all. If we were going to look at character and if I were going to be emotive about this, I do like Emily a lot. I think that she is a lovely woman. I've been watching her videos on and off since the whole CreepShow Art drama and incident, and I really don't believe that this in any way invalidates her experience and her belief of her experience and what she's been through. I do think, however, she knowingly did not provide substantial or enough evidence, that a lot of what she says is based on her belief, based on coincidence, which she states in her own words, and is based on her own findings. Findings that there is not evidence for, or that there isn't, comparatively speaking, evidence for when we look at Shannon's video and the receipts which she has brought forth. I think that there are a lot of claims that do not make sense. For instance, the claim that CreepShow Art conveniently was waiting for YouTube's dislikes to be hidden from the general public watching before she put out her video. There is absolutely no basis for this accusation whatsoever. How on earth would Shannon know that YouTube was going to remove their dislikes? Secondly, she can see the dislikes because in the YouTube studio, creators can see how many people like and dislike your videos. So it in no way hides that from her personally. And thirdly, why would she leave her comments on if inevitably and obviously, based on all of the comments underneath her video, everybody, well, at least 99% of people disliked the video. It just seems quite, again, speculative to assume that it's convenient that she decided to put this video out now, when 6 months ago she did state on a community post, I believe, that she would be coming back to YouTube, but that she would get all her evidence together, that she would compile everything and then come back. So this to me made perfect sense. And I think the issue with speculating is that speculation has no limits. It's sort of a monster that you keep feeding, and you can keep feeding it. I think that this is something that audiences, that us as viewers of content creators, particularly of influencers and the more influential creators, need to really take on board. I think it is so easy for us to judge other people and to judge them extremely and without any limits, without any recourse to logic, to stepping back, to reflecting, to admitting our wrongs, and to apologizing ourselves. It's always the YouTubers who have to apologize. It's never the viewers of those YouTubers who apologize for their words, for their actions, for the horrible things that they've said and presented and done. And that dynamic it's worrisome. Even though this relationship which a viewer may have with a creator is it's quite one-sided in the sense that it's very much determined by the YouTuber presenting their content that they want, having the autonomy to set their hours, getting paid for what they're doing, providing a service of sorts. It doesn't take away from the fact that they are not robots, that they are human beings, and that they ought to be treated as such. And that doesn't mean patting them on the back. It doesn't mean accepting their wrongs, but it does mean understanding when they are, for instance, not going to be remorseful. And I can understand why Shannon is not being remorseful. Even though I want her to address certain things, I can understand why she isn't. Because she feels very much attacked and she feels very alone. And she's very distrusting of everyone. She feels incredibly let down. And as a human, that is a very understandable response. As what a content creator ought to be, it's not a good move. In order to have come back as CreepShow Art, it would have made sense for her to come back in the sense of sitting down, apologizing, taking accountability, promising that she's turned over a new leaf, that she took these 6 months to reflect, to find herself, that she doesn't know who that person was back then who did these things, whether or not she did them. I personally do not believe that she did them, which does not take away from the fact that I also believe that Emily believes that this is Shannon and Anthony. But based on the evidence that Shannon has presented, I do believe that she was not involved in the awful experience which Emily has been going through online and in her personal life for so many years. The hate that Shannon has been receiving, and it is hate, very much so, especially when it comes from commentators and people stating that they do not have the time to watch a 2.5-hour video. It is quite saddening, and I think that this is just something to think about and to reflect on, as we've seen significant creators such as Lindsay Ellis leaving the platform. And I think for, at least on the base, the same reasons, she has ultimately had a large chunk of her audience turn against her and chase her off, and it's just not worth it. And I do think that when it isn't worth it anymore, when your psyche, when your perception of who you are is being impacted by hundreds of thousands of strangers on the internet, telling you how you should think about yourself, telling you how you should do X, Y, and Z, when they have no idea who you are, when they have no idea what you're going through, what's running through your mind, when they have no evidence, concrete, solid, indisputable evidence, that is not a place where you should be. You should not base your personhood and who you are on the opinions of strangers on the internet. And I think that that's just an important lesson. I have a phenomenal audience. I couldn't ask for a better, more. I don't even have words to describe my audience, but my audience is incredible, and my comment sections always just blow me away when I do read them and engage with them, because I am very lucky that my comment section, I find that it's very insightful and that people are very much into communicating their opinions freely and respecting each other's opinions. And I ask that you do the same on this video, that whether or not you agree with my position, whether or not you have the same opinion as me is irrelevant. My comments are open. I think this is just an opportunity for us as consumers of YouTuber content to really look at how we treat our fellow human beings. So yes, that is my opinion on the CreepShow Art, Emily Artful situation. I wish both of them well, actually. I think it's very, very good that they just do not interact with one another, and that they can hopefully find fulfillment off of the internet in their respective lives. So hate away in the comment section if you must, I guess. But if you have gotten to the end of this video, I sincerely hope that you do not hate on what I have said, that you share your opinions, whether they align with mine or not. Please add your thoughts, your perspectives, and how you see not just this situation with CreepShow Art and Emily Artful, which I know is quite a niche little subsection of YouTube, but more so the idea of the parasocial relationship between a creator and their audience, and how you feel things could improve in that regard.